Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben. Now, has this ever happened to you? I have to say you're being very churlish. Your last comment was quite facetious and very trite. It really is a flimsy argument. Oh really? Well, I think you're stupid. I bet that even happens to you when you're speaking in your mother tongue, right? But probably a lot more when you're speaking in English. By the way, both of those characters were played by me. I just took my glasses off and put a different shirt on. Pretty good acting, right? Anyway, if that does happen to you, then this is the video for you because I'm going to be teaching you 10 super advanced adjectives that will help you win any argument. Well, I can't guarantee that it will help you win any argument, but at least you won't be humiliated or make a fool of yourself. Okay, so let's go straight on to number one. Facetious is the first adjective today, so the pronunciation facetious, facetious. And this means treating something serious, so a serious topic, in an inappropriately humorous way. So you can imagine when you're having a serious debate about something and somebody just makes a remark which is inappropriate because they're trying to be funny. So often we use facetious with the word remark, so a facetious remark or a facetious comment. So the example, the MP's facetious remark about poverty was totally unacceptable. So the MP's, so the Member of Parliament, remember MP in British politics stands for Member of Parliament. The MP's facetious remark about poverty was totally unacceptable. Obviously, poverty is a very serious topic, a very serious issue. I think everybody would agree with that. So if this MP tried to make it humorous, tried to say something funny, that's unacceptable. It's not appropriate. Okay, let's move on to number two now. Churlish. Churlish. Now, basically, churlish just means rude or unpleasant. And it's used in arguments when you want to say that to the person you're arguing with, that you think that the person is being rude and unpleasant, or maybe they've just said something in particular that you think is churlish, so it's rude or unpleasant. So the example is, I think it would be churlish of you to complain about a free service. So I think it would be churlish of you to complain about a free service. So if you're getting a free service, whatever it may be, it could be kind of considered rude if you complain about it. So you're saying it's churlish of the person to complain. Quite interestingly, I think, the origin of churlish comes from churl, which is an old word which we don't use anymore, which refers to a low-level farmer of centuries ago. So they would be considered quite low in society. So if you're churlish, you behave like a churl. So you think these people are quite rude and unpleasant. I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure they were very nice people, but that's how the word has evolved over the years and decades and centuries. Okay, so number three now. Petty. Petty. You may have heard the word petty from the famous singer Tom Petty, but it's nothing to do with him. And petty means having little or no importance, basically insignificant. So the example, we really need to focus on what really matters, not the petty issues like what we're going to have for lunch. Okay, so you can imagine in a meeting, you're trying to find a solution to something, or you have something very important to talk about, and some people just want to talk about what you're going to have for lunch, which in the circumstances that's quite a petty issue. So this person is saying we really need to focus on what really matters, not the petty issues like what we're going to have for lunch. Actually, petty has another meaning. When you describe a person as being petty, a petty person, it means that they're overly concerned or overly obsessed about small things and not about the big things. So another example with that use, you're being petty. There are far more important problems to worry about. So in this case, you're just referring to the way the person is being at that moment. They're obsessing about the little things. Again, it could be what you're having for lunch. Okay, let's move on to number four now. So the fourth adjective, which will help you win any argument, or at least not humiliate yourself, is wearisome. Wearisome. Now, wearisome basically means boring and tiring. It's kind of a mixture of both boring and tiring. So in this context, when we're talking about arguments, if you describe someone or someone's argument as being wearisome, then basically you're just saying that they're maybe being repetitive or just being boring, and they are tiring you out. So it's quite offensive, so be careful how you use it. If you're just describing their argument, then it's not so offensive, because you're not really insulting the person, you're insulting their argument. So it depends on the context, of course. But the example is, your insistence on repeating the same argument is becoming quite wearisome. So your insistence on repeating the same argument is becoming quite wearisome. So in this case, you know, the person you're arguing with is just going on and not giving any new ideas, new content, just going around in circles, and you're getting tired and bored, and it's becoming quite wearisome. Okay, number 5, pertinent. Pertinent. So pertinent means relevant to the matter under discussion. So something that is important and relevant to the subject that is being discussed at that moment. You make an interesting and pertinent point, but I disagree with it. Okay? So you're kind of leading in your adversary, the other person in the argument, by saying, you make an interesting and pertinent point. That's good, right? That's positive. But I disagree with it. It's quite interestingly that the opposite of pertinent is impertinent. So it has the opposite meaning. Impertinent is irrelevant. But that word actually has another meaning, which is probably more common, an impertinent person. So if you describe a person as being impertinent, you're basically saying they're being rude. So again, you have to be careful with the different meanings. There are quite different meanings with impertinent. It could just be irrelevant, it's impertinent, or rude. So as always, it depends on the context. So number 6 now, flimsy. Flimsy, nice word, isn't it? Nice word to say, at least. So flimsy means weak, easily damaged or destroyed. So often we use it in a physical sense, a literal sense. So you could say, I bought a very cheap smartphone. It works well, but it feels quite flimsy. So you could say the material is quite flimsy. It doesn't feel strong or sturdy. But in this video, we're looking at how to use adjectives in arguments. So we're going to use flimsy in a more figurative sense. And we can use flimsy with words like argument, so a flimsy argument, excuse, a flimsy excuse, and flimsy evidence. So if you're trying to present evidence of something, but it's not very robust, not very strong, it's flimsy. And that's how I use it in this example. So the conclusion you came to is based on very flimsy evidence. The conclusion you came to is based on very flimsy evidence. So the person is saying here that, you know, the evidence that you've based all your conclusions on is weak. It's not robust. It's easily destroyed. It's not strong enough, basically. Okay, number 7 now. Puerile. Puerile. Puerile basically means silly or childish. So something or somebody who is described as being puerile, it's like they're behaving in a silly way or in a childish way. So they're behaving like a child, or the comment they have made is childish. It's like something a child would say. Okay, so the example is, I think it's puerile to assume that the climate crisis can be solved by individuals. So I think it's puerile to assume that the climate crisis can be solved by individuals. So this person is saying that I think it's silly and childish, it's not serious. In this very serious issue, the idea that climate change or the climate crisis can be solved just by individuals doing individual acts, it's not really a mature way to talk about the issue. It's childish and silly. I'm not saying I agree with that, by the way. It's just an example, and I always have to include at least one example referring to climate change, because I know a lot of you are preparing for the Cambridge English exams, and it often comes up in those exams. Okay, the next one, number 8 now. Trite. Trite. Trite is basically referring to something that is lacking effectiveness due to overuse. So usually referring to an expression or a view or an opinion which has been expressed so often in the past, so many times, it's been repeated many times that it's not really effective. It's boring, basically. It becomes boring. And the example is, your comment that young people these days are lazy and entitled is trite and unfair. So your comment that young people these days are lazy and entitled is trite and unfair. So they're saying, you know, we've heard this so many times, young people are lazy, young people are entitled. And that's trite, because it's been repeated so often that it lost its effectiveness. So trite, it's a good one to use. Number 9 now. Fervent. Fervent. Now, fervent means having very strong feelings or being very passionate. Actually, the origin of fervent comes from just hot. It's another way of saying hot. So you can imagine, yeah, if you're very hot, you're very passionate and very strong feelings about something. I'm a fervent believer in the use of emotional connection to learn and remember new vocabulary. So this is something I speak a lot about in my videos, that when you're coming up with your own examples, which you all should be doing right now during this video, hopefully, and sharing them in the comments, but you should be making an emotional connection. So think of examples that have an emotional connection to you. Include people you know and love, maybe people in your family, your friends, names of people you know, because then that will really help you remember this vocabulary in the future, because you can just remember the example. So I'm a fervent believer in that. Okay, the last one now, number 10, and I'm saving a very strong one for the last. Scathing. Scathing. Yeah, scathing is pretty strong. It means very critical, severe, and harsh. And we use it with words like criticism, so scathing criticism. Remark, again, scathing remark. Comment, remark and comment are basically synonyms. Indictment, so it's a scathing indictment. Or even with a look or a stare, a scathing stare or scathing look. So it's when you look at someone in a very critical way, a very harsh way. I can't do it, I'm not good at doing scathing looks, but you can imagine. Anyway, here is my example. Your scathing criticism of social media is over the top, in my opinion. Your scathing criticism of social media is over the top, in my opinion. So you can imagine that this person is speaking to somebody who has just criticized social media in a very extreme, very harsh way, very severe way. So maybe they've said that all social media is bad, it's all negative, it's bad for society. But you respond by saying your scathing criticism is over the top, it's excessive. So this severe criticism is too much. Okay, so now you're ready to argue with anyone in English and not make a fool of yourself. As I said, I can't guarantee you'll win the argument, but at least you won't be embarrassed. Okay, thank you for joining me, and I will see you very soon for another video. Take care, bye.